In this video, I really want to talk about just 3 simple mapping, graphing, general lake tips that I think will help you to eliminate a lot of water and start catching fish a lot faster. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. Right now at Fin Fishing, I am running a big sale, so a lot of items are 20% off, and a few items are even 30% off. So you can get bass hats, USA-made sun shirts, the all-new duck shorts, a number of different items. Also, anyone who orders something in the month of December is going to automatically be entered into a contest to win one of 4 different prizes. I'm giving away 2 one-of-a-kind bass hats. They're the only colors of bass hat I've ever made, just one of them. I'm also giving away an ARC Tharp Series grinder rod. This is a great crankbait rod, and an ARC Gravity 7 reel. This is my favorite bait caster that I've ever used. So I'm gonna leave some links down below in the description. Shopping at Fin Fishing is truly the best way to help support this channel. I greatly appreciate all of you who have done so, and all of you who simply just watch the videos. All right, let's talk about just 3 really simple tips that can help you to eliminate a lot of water. So the first thing that I really want to talk about when it comes to going to a body of water, I do not care what time of the year it is look for where the major spawning pockets, creek arms, bays, wherever the major spawning areas are, look for them on a map. This is one of the best things that you can do, because typically the bigger the spawning area, the more fish that are going to relate to that area throughout the entire year. Now, we know from a lot of different studies that have been done that, there are bass that will move a lot throughout the course of a year. There's bass that move miles, but there's also a humongous population of bass that do not move that far. They stay in a zone. If they have everything that they need, cover and bait, then there's no real reason for them to continue moving. And we've even seen, one study that I looked at showed this bass that was an 8-pounder that stayed in a very shallow water pocket, basically like a spawning pocket, all the way until June of the year. And this was down in Texas, and June in Texas is hot. Okay, so there's always going to be a population of bass that are relating to spawning areas. So anytime that I go to a new body of water, I am always looking at a map and literally circling on a map where I think the best spawning areas are. Like I said, even if it's June or July and you're going there and you know that you're going to be doing more offshore fishing, I still am going to look at the spawning areas, because again, those spawning areas really will tell you where a key population of the bass are. Now, the biggest thing when it comes to spawning areas, and we've talked about this here a little bit recently, but you always want to look for protected water. That is the number one thing. You want to look for protected water. I also like banks on the north side. This is not something new, but banks on the north sides are pockets that kind of shoot up north. Like if you think of a traditional lake, and it has a creek arm, and it has pockets, like literally my fingers are like the different pockets. Those ones that shoot up north as opposed to the ones that go down south, those ones up north tend to warm up faster. You tend to have a good population of bass that relate to them and that are going to use them for spawning, because sun hits there a lot throughout the day, and therefore you're not going to have the shade, which bass need sun. Bass need sun in order to fertilize their eggs. So that's why I really like those northern sides. Not saying they can't spawn on southern sides, because they absolutely do, but those northern banks really tend to be very good in the spawn and helping you to identify really good spawning areas. So that's the first thing that I'm always going to look for, no matter what time of the year is. Now, with that being said, if it's June or July, or that you're going, or even in the middle of winter, if you know that you're going to be doing more offshore style, maybe main lake fishing, really what I'm going to do is just look at what are the best structural features that are out from that main spawning area. And so sometimes you can look at a map, say it's June or July, say it's December or January, really where you're going to be primarily offshore fishing. You can look at a map, you can see a couple of major spawning areas, and you can look just out from those spawning areas, and you can see, man, there's a really good hump right there. There's a really good point right there. There's a really good ledge right there. And it's all in front of those major spawning areas. Those are the first places that I'm going to check. Because more than likely, if there's a population of bass in those general areas, they're going to stay there. There's going to be fish in that zone. And so I just like to try to simplify it as much as possible. Now, like I said, there's definitely going to be fish that move out throughout the entire lake. You will have fish that are not even close to a spawning area. But if you've never been to a lake, you want to put the odds in your favor. So go to these areas where the major spawning areas are and just look out from them at your main structural features. Now, this actually brings me to the second thing that I wanted to talk about besides the spawning areas is if you have a creek channel or a river channel hitting a piece of structure, it pretty much like will triple your success in that area. Like a lot of lakes, if you think about the way that they're made, you know, and this is lakes, this doesn't apply as much to natural lakes because most natural lakes do not have a creek channel through them, or they don't really have anything like that through them. Sometimes they will just have a deeper water section though. Sometimes you will find areas that are just deeper water where it really drops off, and that's kind of the same as what we're looking for with the creek channel. Now, anywhere that a creek channel or a river channel hits up against a good piece of structure, it's typically going to be, like I said, probably 3 times better than a piece of structure or cover that is all by itself. And so like if you see a hump out in the middle of the lake, but that hump is on kind of a more or less of a bigger flat, that hump may not be near as good as the hump where that creek channel runs right up against it. To me, I've always thought that a creek channel running up against a piece of structure, it provides a home for a bass. I think that there is a population of bass that just live there. I think that humps or pieces of structure that don't really have these creek channels around them are the only reason that the bass typically get there is because bait is there, or maybe there's some really good cover on there. Maybe there's some really good grass or really good brush pile, whatever it may be. So like I said, again, I'm not saying that you won't find a hump out in the middle of the nowhere or a point that doesn't have a creek channel swinging up against it that aren't good. I'm saying that if you're trying to eliminate water quickly, put the odds in your favor and look for areas that have structural features that have creek channels running up against them. It's truly one of the best things that can really help you just to eliminate water very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about, this is the third and the final thing. When it comes to a lake, if you think about a lot of different lakes across the country, they are built very similar. And what I'm talking about here is mostly like a reservoir, where they have placed a dam on a creek or a river and have dammed it up. They create similar bodies of water. Now, the biggest thing that you can always do with these style of reservoirs is break them down into 3 main sections, because almost every one of these like reservoirs is kind of similar. They have their different characteristics. They may be a highland reservoir versus a lowland reservoir, but still what you typically see is that the lower end, which is by the dam, is typically going to be clear water and deeper water. Okay, then you're going to have a middle section of the lake. The middle section of the lake is typically a little bit off color, not like muddy water. It's going to be a little bit just different as far as water clarity, maybe a few foot difference. In that general zone, to me, and we'll talk about this in just a minute here, is a really good zone. It's a really good zone. And then you typically have the upper end of a lake, which typically is the more river style of lake. It's more off color, it's more river-esque, and a lot of fish up in that zone will stay shallow throughout the year. And so the one thing that I do want to tell you is that some lakes in the country are flipped, right? Some areas, they actually put the dam on the northern side. And so everything in that case is basically reversed. The northern end or the upper end of the lake is where the dam is. And so therefore that is the clear water section. So just keep that in mind. Some lakes are really kind of like run east to west or west to east as well. And so, but regardless, you typically can break these lakes into 3 sections. You have the lower end by the dam, clear water. You have the middle section, a little bit more off color. And you have the upper section, more river-esque and more muddier water. Okay. With that all being said, I have found that in a number of lakes, that middle section of a lake to me is what I typically look for. Those are the areas of the lake that I like to fish the most. And the biggest reason is that they provide you with a lot of options. You know, if you get into some reservoirs where it's very clear water on the lower end, I feel like it really makes those fish act a little bit differently, where you're gonna have a lot of fish suspended. This is actually the reason why you see a lot of guys who love, forward-facing sonar and using live scope and Mega Live and active target. They go down to the lower end because they can find a population of bass that are suspended. Now, like I said, I'm not saying that you can't find fish other ways on the lower end, because it just depends on the cover that is on that lake and everything that's unique about that specific lake. But to me, there's a lot of suspended fish on that lower end by the dam. Then you have the very upper section. If you have a little bit more muddy water, this is more shallow water. This is more power fishing. This is more crankbaits. This is more casting by cover crankbaits, spinnerbaits, jigs. It's a lot of fun up in the river section of lakes. But the only thing about that is that there are certain times of the year where there are not great populations of bass in the river section. But no matter what, there's always going to be some sort of fish there. So that's why, to me, I actually prefer the middle section, because the middle sections of a lot of lakes, you will have where you can fish offshore. You will also have areas where you can fish very shallow, because some creek arms that come into that middle section will be off color. So once you get into some of those creek arms, you actually have really off color or muddy water in some of those sections, while also having some clear water out on the main lake. And so you kind of have the best of both worlds. And I think that because of that, you always have a good population of bass that kind of sticks in that zone. And so if you look at a lot of tournaments, like I'm a tournament angler, so I always pay attention to little things, but if you look at a lot of tournaments that are fished on some of these reservoirs, you will also find a lot of tournaments are won in the mid portions of lakes, okay? And so anyways, those are a few mapping, graphing, lake tips that I could think about that I think can really help you to eliminate water really quickly. So let's break this down real quick. Say it's whatever time of the year, you look at a lake map and all of a sudden you're like, all right, I'm gonna concentrate on the middle section. So now you've basically eliminated probably about 60% of the lake right off the giddy. You're looking at the middle section only. Now I'm looking at the major creek arms or the major spawning areas in that lake. Okay, now I've probably eliminated another 30%, or whatever it may be. Like, you've already eliminated 90% of water in 2 seconds. The next thing you're going to look at is apply the time of the year it is and look for those creek channels that hit against structure or cover or whatever it may be. And so right off the bat, you can just eliminate so much water, and it can give you areas to concentrate on. Okay, so that's how I break down a body of water and try to do it in a quick time frame. So anyways, guys, hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And if you guys want to watch me break down a body of water, I'm going to link my lake break series, which I do over on BassFishingHQ. It's literally, all I do is I go to newer lakes or lakes that I haven't been to in a long time and try to break them down in a course of a day. And so I'm going to leave that linked right up here. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.